pada. So after that complete negation of existence, Revati is the void, where one stage of a person's life or one's previous lifetime is at an end, and the next lifetime has not yet begun. And then there's the conditions of, well, have all of one's attachments been dissolved, disintegrated? Or are there still some in existence? If there's still some in existence, well, let's kind of prepare your next lifetime for you. With Revati, there's always a sense that things are taking form, but they're not quite there yet. It can either be a very reflective and restorative nakshatra. It's ruled over by Mercury, so it can either be very reflective or make one think about particular things or give a person a period of time with which to gather themselves, or it can make one feel a little bit nervous dependent upon the circumstances involved, because one begins to sense that something is being prepared, but it's not quite there yet. We've had Uranus in this particular nakshatra for quite a while. It's creating there's a lot of world changes that are going on. We're kind of on the cusp between two different phases of our evolution, and that's what Uranus is doing in this particular nakshatra. The deity connected with this nakshatra is Pushan, which on one level is the sun as nurturer, protector, and fosterer. So it's protecting one in between periods. It's like those times when we feel like we have to take a leap of faith. When those moments when we're having to take a leap of faith, it would be Pushan that would be protecting us. And Revati also generally tends to create a situation where a person has to muster a sense of faith. Right? So that's something that just naturally seems to happen. But Pushan is also related to the aspect of the sun that measures out time. And mythologically, it's said that this is the nakshatra in which Saturn was born. Saturn is the planet of time, as we know. Revati is also a name for the wife of Balarama, who was the elder brother of Krishna. So in order to, if we remember our story, in order to protect Balarama from Kamsa, who wanted to kill him, Balarama was transferred to the womb of Devaki. But from the womb of Devaki to the womb of Rohini, right? And he was born from the womb of Rohini and became Krishna's helper and companion. As Revati is the counterpart of Balarama, who was transferred from one womb to another. And there we have that analogy. So being transferred from one womb to another, being transferred from one phase of life into another. So Revati is recognized as the preservative and protective principle of nature. Okay. So what tends to happen with Revati nakshatra is it's the end of one phase and the beginning of the next phase has not yet come into being. It's endurance. It's time itself. The basis above with this particular nakshatra is the cows. So in Hindu mythology, obviously cows are looked at as giving nourishment. Basis below here on earth is cows. Those two receive nourishment from the cows. And the result between these two energies is nourishment of the entire world. It's a moksha-driven nakshatra, so the idea here is liberation, and it is sattvic at every single level, with the Trimurti association of Shiva. This is the complete end. The complete negation has already taken place, and one is in the void and is perhaps moving on to that final merging or getting ready to move into another phase of existence. Mm-hmm. Revati is also a very sensitive nakshatra, and you can generally find people in career positions of caring will have a prominent career planet in Revati because they want to take care of people. Right. Pushan is also the protector of herds and protector of travelers. There's a lot that's really said in all of those analogies.
So does having a planet in this nakshatra or ascendant lord or the moon in this nakshatra, would this make one a traveler? I mean, would that?
It could make one a traveler. Like I've noticed analogies with people being sailors, or people who travel around the globe. That's one way of looking at it. But one would also want to protect travelers. Or let's say, for instance, if somebody saw a beggar on the street, well, that's a traveler. That's a traveler in existence who might be having a hard time on the road. So the natural impulse would be to protect or to help that person. It's a very sensitive nakshatra, but when Mercury is not well supported, then the person can be hypersensitive. Quite often, to the extent that they become very emotional and don't really know how to handle the impulse.
So what would be some examples of like particular planets this nakshatra, so we can understand a little bit more of how it might play out or how it might work?
Okay, well, let's think of Venus in this particular nakshatra. It would bring out the more caregiving aspects of Venus, wanting to heal, wanting to help, really loving everybody. Right, those would be the people who love everybody. Let's think of another planet that we could put there. Mars. That's an interesting one, right? Mars would want to be the warrior protecting the other person. But if Mars is not well supported and Mercury isn't well supported, well, then that person might become chivalrous when being chivalrous is not really necessary or desired. Might rush in to protect somebody else when it's not necessary to protect somebody else. The relationship lord, or a karaka for relationships, is in Revati. The person might get into relationships with people that they want to mother. So here we would have the people who naturally pick out a project in terms of forming a relationship with somebody.
Right.
Rather than forming a relationship with the person, they're going, here's somebody I can mother, or here's somebody I can be a father figure to.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, let's see. Looks like, did we cover everything about this particular nakshatra? Looks like we did.
Well, except the Shakti, which is the power to nourish.
Oh, the Shakti, okay, yes.
Yeah.
Power to nourish.
Now, I could say one more thing about this is the concept of, we could think of active time, which would be, we go through different phases of our life. We work through our karma. That's all happening in active time.
Right.
Okay. And Revati is where active time becomes the concept of passive time, or the infinite, going through eternity. Right. So that's the active time has come to an end, and there's kind of a wait and see period. I like using the wait and see analogy in terms of Revati.
Right.
I also wanted to share with people who are, who are watching this, that a lot of this information I have really learned from a very wonderful book. If you are looking for a very wonderful book on the nakshatras, my favorite book on the nakshatras is one where a lot of this information comes from, which is Myths and Symbols of Vedic Astrology by Bipin Bihari. It's a very profound book on the nakshatras, and it's written in a very esoteric manner. So you really have to meditate upon what's being said, which is good, I find, in terms of books where you're learning about things, because they're going to make you meditate upon it so that you're able to take that information in to the extent that it becomes your own, and it becomes more of a subjective experience that you're then able to share with others in terms of your understanding of it.
Right.
But it's a very profound book.
Excellent. Good.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, do you have any final thoughts on this particular nakshatra, or any final thoughts on anything that we've covered so far in this course before we conclude here and move on next week or next time with our principles and interpretation class?
I think the only thing I would share is that one of the things that's going to help you most in understanding the nakshatras, and this is why I have been very pedantic about sharing this with each particular nakshatra, is understanding the stage of the spiritual journey that each of these represents. because that's the type of symbol that's universal to us all. And when you begin to understand those universal symbols, and it lets the seed be planted. It's going to help that knowledge or that wisdom to unfold. That's one of the things that will help you the most with this. There are so many different associations with the nakshatras, and each of those associations is going to bring out a different quality of that nakshatra. And each of these nakshatras is very vast, and I've really only touched on a very small portion of it, because just like we can never know everything about the planets, and we can never know everything about the rashis, we can never know every single thing about the nakshatras. Mm-hmm. But if we understand a lot of the different qualities of the nakshatra, then we can see how a particular planet is going to bring out different aspects of that particular nakshatra.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we can meditate on it on our own, and learning these things, that you shared and that we've covered. And I was just recently watching the video that Ernst Wilhelm did on Deva Prajna. Mm-hmm. And, he mentioned that when you get a session with an astrologer, that astrologer is sharing with you what is most appropriate for you at this time. So by learning all of these things, all these principles, even though it is somewhat mechanical and memorization and rote at first, and as you're saying, to contemplate it, that when it comes time to think about what does it mean to have this planet in this particular nakshatra, or this house lord in this particular nakshatra, then the applicable part of your understanding can come forth to reveal it to you. Does that seem accurate to you?
Oh, exactly. And when I first started working with Vedic astrology, I just became completely entranced in the nakshatras. It's like they just kind of called to me. And so I began to read everything on them that I could find, and play around with it and experiment with it and see what it was bringing out. And I just became very, for lack of a better word, wowed by what I was picking up with them. And I found that they were giving so much deeper information than simply understanding a planet in a sign and in a house cusp would do. Right. It really gave it the color and the quality that was otherwise missing. It's just a very profound subject, the nakshatras.
Well, I've also, when I used to try to study Sanskrit, I remember being told that the things that occur in the beginning of a Sanskrit text or chapter or whatever it might be, that's the most important part, and then the rest kind of becomes more exposition of what was in the very beginning.
Right.
And again, I don't know if this is true for astrological texts as well as like the Yoga Sutras. I know it's specifically true for the Yoga Sutras. But I remember going through Brihat Parashar Hora Shastra, and one of the first things that it talks about is the nakshatras as the zodiac. It doesn't start by saying Pisces, Aries, Taurus or whatever. It says, no, the zodiac are the nakshatras. And then it goes on to, it kind of throws in after the fact, the 12 signs. And sometimes I wonder, this is just in my head, but sometimes I wonder if the addition of the ideas of Pisces and Aries and Taurus and Gemini, if those were just additions later on. I think they might be, but they still work. But it's just curious to see in Brihat Parashar Hora Shastra that the zodiac they say is the zodiac. From what I can recall, they're talking about the nakshatras.
Well, wanting to add to that, I've often used to think the same thing, because if you understand that it's easier to mark planetary motions at nighttime against stars than it would be during daytime, because you're not able to see fixed stars. You can, the ancient seers would have been able to feel their presence, but in terms of actually monitoring and watching over time, it's at nighttime. So it seems to only make sense that that lunar astrology would have been something that likely would have come into existence first.
Right.
Yeah. We can either put this on there or not. But
that's interesting. Yeah. We'll see.
Yeah. But I've often thought the same thing, that the nakshatras were probably preceding the concept of rashis.
Right.
Vedic astrology.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess we'll go ahead and conclude here. And next few sessions, we'll actually be looking at techniques to help us understand how to apply the nakshatras, correct?
Excellent. Yes, most definitely. Yes.
All right, good. Well, it's good meeting with you again, Michael, and look forward to our next conversation.
Same here, Ryan.
Okay, thanks.